Sweet, thank you. Thank you to the center. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to read just a very small part of a sentence that is about a 30,000 word long sentence that theoretically, if you could hold everything in apposition, is grammatically correct. And it comes from Oulipo technique, definitional literature, and I begin with a sentence from Gottlob Frege on the introduction of a name for something simple. A definition is not possible. There is nothing for it but to lead the reader or hearer by means of hints to understand the words as is intended. And so I took each of those words and replaced it with its dictionary definition, then took each of the words in that next sentence and replaced them with their dictionary definition. And so this is from fairly early on in the 5th iteration out. That is to say, the taking of communion of molestation by the mutual relation of two bodies whose external surfaces touch each other and, at frequent or short intervals, often repeatedly, as deriving or deducing from a specified source their full, interesting, and productive existence. That is, a worthwhile, meaningful, or fulfilling lifestyle of an inflorescence in which the central axis grows indefinitely in length, producing a succession of lateral branches bearing flower buds, or of sessile flower buds, which open successively from the lowest upwards, typically liberal in giving, that is, generous, namely, bountiful, munificent, in other words, open-handed, also liberal in expenditure, prodigal, lavish, or a good deal, sum total to which anything mounts up or reaches in quantity, number, or the sum of the principal and interest due upon a loan on the part of the share of an estate given by the passing of law to an heir or other beneficiary, or to be distributed to an heir in the settlement of an estate or the exact quantity of an amount of money or a group of several closely related and morphologically similar species formerly, still occasionally for convenience, not distinguished from each other, belonging to an action of collecting money from a religious or charitable purpose, or to defray expenses, especially at a religious service or public meeting, of self-same fees payable to a chief who presides at a thing or unites in one person or substance in any way compelling, cogent, convincing, skillicate. Clear, obvious, or not full-fledged, sprouted in the ear after reaching maturity, or grown from germ of rudimentary condition of the characteristic tendency to change, specifically fickleness, that is to say, change of purpose or plans or a cipher for secret correspondence in moderate proportional mixture of elements of a compound, that is, the condition in which elements are combined in the due proportion, particularly the combination of supposed quantities, hot, cold, moist, or dry, in a certain proportion determining the nature of a plant or other body, namely the combination of the four cardinal humors of the body by the relative proportion of which the physical and mental constitution are held to be determined. The condition of the weather or the climate is resulting from different combinations of the qualities heat, cold, dryness, humidity, that is, the adjustment of the intervals and the scale and the tuning of instruments of fixed intonation as keyboard instruments so as to adapt them for the purpose of practical harmony consisting of slight variations of the pitch of the notes of the true or just intonation in order to make them available in different keys. Strictly speaking, a particular system of doing this, sometimes extended to any system of tuning, including that of just intonation, and namely a middle course or state between extremes of any kind that is or has been portrayed in an oeuvre, or vidalique, that is, the marking out of the precise form of anything, specifically form, mold, or stamp, thus impressed, in which the period of time mentioned in certain biblical passages, usually understood to be a year in an interior passage, now in Scotland especially, one leading from the street to a dwelling house, outhouse, or stables at the back, or to a common stair communicating with the different floors or flats of the building, also variously extended to include the common stair, the open lane or alley, or the court to which any entry leads to an outlying part of a village or a small country town, the end of an estate, or an outlying property, usually preceded by a descriptive name of a passage, generally made up of 2 or 4 phrases from a complete musical idea and regarded as a distinct unit. Id est. A set of digits and a long number marked off by commas or spaces to assist comprehension. Also, the set of repeating digits and a recurring decimal indicated by dots placed over the first and last digits of the set depends on that of the sumptuous, magnificent, munificent, stately, splendid, imposing, enclosed with clouds or darkness, the end, close, finish, termination, wind up, e.g., of a speech, or riding, of the central or far from central, sharp, horny nail with which the feet of birds and some beasts are armed to the lowest part of the leg beyond the ankle joint, of an effort to force phlegm up out of the throat of an ancient kind of light cannon, or a man, woman, or child, or any of the characters in a play or story, in view of what has happened, principally, mainly, for the most part, or as a colloquialism of a low and unrefined characteristic of one proper to ordinary conversation as distinguished from formal or elevated language, or as each of the days in the year fixed for payment of rent, wages, and other dues at the beginning and the end of tenancy, of marriage to one of inferior rank, that is to say, the disgrace or dishonor involved in such a misalliance, or one's own person's granting tenure of a feudal fee to another, the vassal, on condition of an annual payment of a certain sum of the performance of a certain service and no small many medical advance forewarnings. Originally, actions or warnings in advance, that is, advance notification of subsequent events now, usually strong feelings that something is about to happen, especially something unpleasant expressly, presentiments or forebodings of sudden sticking, jamming, or locking fast, specifically becoming unworkable as by reason of undue heat or friction of the nature of epilepsy that comprises not only the parents and children, but also consanguine and conjugal relatives living in proximity, or brought out and rendered visible, the latent image produced by actinic actions upon the sensitive surface in an office or function of the conductor of an orchestra or choir, running lengthwise in the sweet music of song, sometimes used with reference to the singing of birds. That is, the beauty of musical sounds, tunefulness, melodiousness, in latter use, often simply music, frequently with overtones of a series of single notes arranged in musically expressive or distinctive sequence, skillet tune, to wit, the tune around which a polyphonic composition is constructed, or which constitutes the predominant part of a piece, to which other parts serve as accompaniment, fuss, or outcry about something, particularly the very small or trifling sum, amount, or value of a thing of little worth or importance belonging to a, quote, way in which a text reads, end quote. In other words, quote, the letter of the text, end quote. By way of explanation, quote, the form in which a text is found in a particular copy, a lection, end quote, a vituperation, anger, reproach, reproof from the itinerancy, revolution, just group of harpists is going down upon one's knees, and a portable case for holding arrows, and sometimes also a bow, or tremble or quaver in the voice in such a way as to make a fraudulent imitation of these or those, organized in later use, usually covert, opposition to an invading, occupying, or ruling power, that is, that organized body of individuals engaged in such opposition, by way of explanation, specifically, usually with the and capital initial, in the Second World War, 1939, 1945. The underground movement formed in France in June 1940 with the object of resisting the authority of the German occupying forces and the Vichy government in order to send a message electronically, especially by telegraph, i.e., to send a person an electronic message, especially a telegram conveying, while bearing up the transmission of a nerve force along the nerve in a charged pan in which the cane or maple juice is heated as part of the process in sugar manufacture, or skillicate, also said in the context of the units of pressure equivalent to 1 dime per square centimeter of the district under the jurisdiction of a collector of customs, taxes, etc., of wine cups made of, quote, the unquenchable stone, and, quote, specifically, a fabulous stone, the heat of which once kindled was alleged to be unquenchable, a distorted reference to the phenomenon observed by pouring cold water on quicklime, that is, an alleged kind of incombustible flax. By way of explanation, a mineral or fibrous texture capable of being woven into an incombustible fabric, specifically all fibrous varieties of hornblende or amphibole and of pyroxene, with amiantus merely being specific and finest hornblende, asbestos distinguished by its long, silky fibers, usually pearly white, etc. In a very amusing, funny, that is, fun, exciting, let us say, great, excellent, steam made suddenly exciting, thrilling, or intense as if caused by electrical charge or shock, skillicate, a mist rising from the ground of a steely, brilliant, or metallic color or shade, having comparatively more stocks or reserves of money, materials, people, or some other asset which can be drawn on when necessary pertaining to the art of literary construction, and returning less frequently to an assembly point or a resting place. That is to say, rarely retiring to one's friends or place, that is to say, trusting on abundance of some good constituent pertaining to or relating the words or vocabulary of a language that is connected with a lexicon accepted or recognized as true or valid, that is acknowledged as such by the general assent of the admission of the speaker, the writer, the faithful, loyal, or trusty person, particularly a, quote, true man, namely a member of the Protestant or Whig party in the 17th century, technically perfect or efficacious, entitled to obedience or acceptance, come to agreement on a matter or point, deposited under an agreement by which the owners assent to some proposed change affecting their amount, nature, or status, or, that is, a man, woman, or child who has become the object of knowledge, the civil force of the state responsible for maintaining public order and enforcing the law, including preventing and detecting crime, or, a person of appearance of questionable character belonging to one who gives evidence in relation to matters of fact under inquiry, that is, specifically, one who gives or is legally qualified to give evidence upon oath or affirmation in a court of justice or judicial inquiry, or a living creature killed and offered as a sacrifice to some deity of sinfulness or supernatural power of wrongdoing, extracted with a pick or by picking in various senses vis-a-vis, dug out, pecked out, or acknowledged, accepted, namely, known, identified, apprehensive expectations, especially from an assembling of a number of persons in a line, e.g., for inspection, or identification. By way of explanation, an instance of bringing into a line, that is, a list of players in a game, orchestra, etc., from an assembly of two or more figures or objects performing a combination either of a complex design or distinct portion of a design of pictures made using a camera in which an image is focused on the sensitive material and then made visible and permanent by chemical treatment by the books of the New Testament, which immediately follow the Gospels and relate to the history of the early Christian church, having no person, thing, or space intervening in place, order, succession, standing, or coming nearest the next, or papers containing an account or observation, the results or research of an intellectual speculation or the like is presented to a learned society, submitted for publication in an academic journal, etc., of the aspects pertaining to or relating to, concerned or connected with, sight or vision of a system for reproducing an actual recorded scene at a distance on a screen by radio transmission, usually with appropriate sound, widely scattered, artificial imitations or representations of persons or the busts of persons in solid form, that is, statues, effigies, sculptural figures, often figures of saints or divinities as an object of religious veneration attaining to vision by distant objects by collective action or arrangement, or expressly the conveyance of passages through a meeting as of light, heat, sound, etc., or the returning of documents or other physical evidence to the custody of the court of such things as reflect, such as mirrors, or, namely, also the badge, emblem, symbol, responding or, quote, answering accordingly to them, of or belonging to the labor, toil, and wasteful expenditure, extravagance, and in reality devolved or accrued through the whole continuance of unnecessary elaborate performance, in plain English, of fuss, commotion. Drama is different from one's regular occupation or employment that serves to help, assist, or supplement, especially providing assistance or supplementary supplies and material, loads, burdens, weights placed or situated overhead at a distance above the ground, that is to say, the best or highest quality, first class, excellent number of pigs, each containing 6 stone, wanting 2 pound, or the fourth parts of the benda existing at the outset, or to wit, also decoratively affixed or attached to a group of moles in another's employ for, quote, the method of ascertaining a ship's course by trigonometrical diagrams, end quote, of what a batsman, an oarsman, etc. has to do, especially with reference to the points at which its force is to be applied, with a deviating course in the absence of the interference of state or government in the domestic affairs or foreign relations of another country belonging to one who contracts or undertakes to supply certain articles or to perform any work or service, especially for a government or other public body, at a certain price or rate, or one who is prepared to undertake work by contract by unhindered literates characterized by refined grace, a form usually the result of art or culture, no longer in servitude or subjection to a figure of speech in which a name or descriptive word or phrase is transferred to an object or action different from but analogous to that which is literally applicable, the use of symbols in a story picture, etc., to convey a hidden or ulterior meaning, typically a moral or political one, that is, a story picture, etc., which uses symbols to convey a hidden or ulterior meaning, typically a moral or political one, especially a symbolic representation expressly an extended or continued metaphor, no longer in servitude or subjection to the character or practice of acting in two different ways at two different times, or openly and secretly, specifically, deceitfulness, double dealing, or the intentional suppression of truth or known fact to the injury and prejudice of another, or, namely, belonging to the Germanic nation or coalition of the nations that conquered Gaul in the 6th century, from which the country received the name of France, commonly fair, strictly speaking, neat, tidy, prominent, striking, pronounced, contributing each to the ranks or levels in a non-mathematical hierarchy in which every member, except those in the lowest ranks, the function of the members of the next lower rank, kept or regarded as inviolate from ordinary use, and appropriated or set apart for religious use or observance on the fixed, firmly embraced, or implanted dowries or restraints in conduct, that is, modesties, discretions, specifically prudences, quote, methodological arrangements, dispositions, end quote, a lengthier work occupying a person for or at a particular time's propagations of perennial plants by splitting clumps into parts capable of rooting themselves into the more rudely, angrily, or sternly brief or curt, your arpeggial gland of a bird which secretes the oil used for preening, setting, placing in a specific state, situation, condition, etc., quote, the space of a specified period of time, end quote, or the measured flow of words or phrases in verse forming various patterns of sounds as determined by the relation of long and short or stressed and unstressed syllables in metrical foot or line, that is, an instance of this, or the secret, private, numbers marked upon dice, id-est throws in which the dice turn up 2 sixes of shaking or movement of the ground, especially a violent convulsion of the Earth's surface, frequently causing great destruction resulting from movements of the Earth's crust or from volcanic action or the action of going off, with a loud noise under the influence of suddenly developed internal energy, also use of electrical discharges or of a boiler, bomb, gun, etc., the action of suddenly bursting or flying in pieces from a similar cause into hiding or surreptitious activity which continue to operate in secret and often subversively after becoming officially unacceptable is clearly perceived or perceptible from the extreme force, strength, depth, brightness, etc. the energy expended in such an action, now called work, at any one partial small residential square or side street, especially a cul-de-sac, lined with houses. In plain English, a short row of houses which originally stood by themselves or on a suburban road. By way of explanation, any group of houses not properly classifiable as a street was often extracted or forced out by mechanical pressure by a precise sum or aggregate of the collection of individual things or persons. That is, a discharge or performance of something pertaining to the logarithmic curve of the highest rates resultant consequent bending of rays of light from the straight line by hook applied specifically to the apparent bending or turning aside of the rays passing near the edge of an opaque body, called by Newton inflection, now explained as a phenomenon of diffraction pertaining to, relating to, characteristic of, connected with, or produced by an earthquake, earthquakes, or earth vibration, balance, settled, or audited to loud, praise, commend, the condition of being at variance, vis-a-vis, discord, disagreement, dissension, that is, dispute, debate of a quantity of a substance or material spread over a nearly horizontal surface to a more or less uniform thickness, it has to layer or a coat, silica, especially one or two or more parallel layers or coats successively superimposed one upon another, resting, reclining, remaining in deposit, being cyclic, etc. The ground or bed under water of a lake, sea, or river lawfully made prisoner, hence gotten into one's powers, won by conquest without formality or ceremony, in a casual or relaxed manner to any connection formed between two or more people or groups based on social interaction and mutual goals, interests, or feelings, the dregs, the sediments, the liquors, the last portion of the wine of the cask of, quote, anything but not any person, and, quote, attentively looked at and surely reflected on as the portion on which it concentrates or dwells upon, becomes preoccupied with, or is given to the support of one's arm, as to a woman for leaning on or walking so as to walk arm in arm as a gesture of courtesy, or, that is, the fund or revenues appropriated to endow such an institution, illegitimate child, foot soldier, or the predominant affection of the familiar form of address, my dear, darling, strictly speaking, sweetheart, belonging to a little crown or coronet suggestive of a butterfly. In other words, showy, specifically frivolous, that is, capricious, to wit, erratically belonging to a prevailing political, economic, or social order, especially regarded as oppressive expressly the establishment, that is, any impersonal, restrictive organization of regulating, moderating, restraining, or a group of bodies moving about one another in space under some particular dynamical law, is the law of gravitation, beholden to moderation, temperance, restraint, that is to say, abstemiousness for another sum of the principal and interest due upon a loan in which the central axis grows indefinitely in length, producing a succession of lateral branches, bearing flower buds or sessile flower buds, which open successively from the lowest upwards. Thank you.